Hello, my name is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and we are doing a recording here on March 21st. This is going to be a recap of what happened as of today in Iran and how it's affecting the financial markets, what the potential further operations may be. Will there be a de-escalation soon? I'll give you my perspective. We're going to analyze a little bit of what's going on in the mainstream media to see what sort of bias may be happening within different media outlets. But before we do, please help support the work that I do. All these videos are for free. Please help support by donating on my website. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or Buy Me a Coffee. It's really simple. It's on the homepage. Just click the links and you can donate. You can also be a paid member to my Patreon channel. You can donate on Stripe, PayPal, or Buy Me a Coffee. You can also follow me on X, GETTR, TikTok, Substack, YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. You can watch my live streams on my website. You can also listen to my archive podcasts on Podomatic, Apple Podcast, and on my website under broadcast radio. So thank you for joining. Please ask your social media to follow me and share the links, and so I can help to grow the channel and reach a larger audience to explain to them how to improve their health and how to navigate through financial markets. Before we go over some of the news, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. I have ebooks, I have supplements, and I also have course material on immunology and pulmonology. As for the products and the supplements, please go to my store and get the structural nanosilver soaps. You can get it in lemongrass and in peppermint. That's what I have in stock right now. Get a few bars for your household. This is great for neutralizing, also to improving the pores of your skin. Use it every day, something that I use every day. Also, go to my store and get the structural nanosilver toothpaste. This toothpaste has no fluoride. It'll whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, bring down inflammation at the gum level, improve your gum line and the health of your gums, and help to neutralize. And that's super important, especially during the cold season. This is the best toothpaste that you can get. There's nothing better. Please go to my store and get the structural nanosilver toothpaste. And Max 35 Cleanse and Max 14. This will help to boost up your immune system. I have them at different price points. Max 35 is 35 parts per million. Max 14 is 14 parts per million. Cleanse is 30 parts per million. You take it the same way, no matter which version you take. Take a teaspoon a day, swish it in your mouth, gargle about 20 seconds, and then swallow it. What this will do is boost up your immune system, neutralize, improve your oral cavity, maintain your mucosal barrier, and help the health of your epithelial cells, especially in your oropharynx. Super important to boost up that immune system. If you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, take a tablespoon or two a day, swish in your mouth, gargle, 20 seconds, and swallow it. It's really easy. Once everything is better, go back to your maintenance dose of a teaspoon a day. I've been doing this for 6 years, this protocol. Boost up your immune system, neutralize. All right, we're going to listen to CNN first. This retired general is going to break down the strategy, the Iran war strategy.
Donald Trump since 1988. So when he says now he could take Park Island anytime he wanted, what would it look like to take it? It's small, but that is not everything.
No, it's not. It's offshore, as you can see right here. Let me get this thing to cooperate with me. Park Island is really very, very close to the shoreline, but it is the main terminal for all oil exports coming out of Iran. About 20% of the world comes through the straits. The challenge with this mission is that coming ashore here, even though it's probably not contested right now because the military capacity has been reduced. But we don't know. There's an intel guy. I don't want to know what has Iran done in the interim between the reduction of that military capability a number of days ago and where we are today.
Yeah.
So there's always challenge associated with coming ashore. And you've got this terminal that is going to be used, I think primarily that's all about leverage more than it is bringing in a capacity to get that thing up and running.
Right, and so you would put, I mean, it would require obviously significant boots on the ground to take that and hold it in the sense of you don't know what could be coming incoming, especially because it's so close to shore. So there's that. Then, you know, you and I talked about securing the Strait of Hormuz quite a bit because you were talking about the very mountainous terrain, which would give Iran, it's also on the other side, but that's not the side where the fire would be coming from.
Right.
On the Iranian side, the benefit of height. So how would ground troops be used in the strait?
Yeah, so what you have en route is an amphibious ready group Marine Expeditionary Unit. It's a mouthful. And what that means is this is an incredibly capable force that can force itself on shore. And it's comprised of elements like this. This is a CH-53 heavy lift helicopter grabbing this artillery piece, which is an M777. This is what we call the beginning of an artillery raid. You take this thing off the ship, you land it where you want it to go.
So then you have artillery capability.
Then you've got counterfire capability within minutes. Also within that capability, these things called Amtrak, incredibly capable. They swim, as you can see, and inside this is about 20 plus Marines. They will disembark to begin their missions. What also they have, obviously, is vertical lift, gunships, the Cobra's incredibly dependable, and also the Osprey, again, vertical lift. You don't need a runway. You can come off the deck of a ship, you can land anywhere, and then you disembark about 30 to 40 Marines.
Okay, so that's what they would be able to move.
Agents can, based on some feedback loop, can, for example, manipulate the knowledge base, the information that they use to actually perform some tasks.
Okay, so that's what they would be able to move quickly. Although obviously when you meet with resistance, there is a risk of real loss of life and also how you get offshore once you get on, as you mentioned a moment ago in our conversation. Now, today Netanyahu says Iran no longer has the ability to enrich uranium, which is obviously significant. Obviously, Trump had said the program was eliminated last summer, was obliterated last summer, actually. Right. So it's unclear what those terms at this point really mean. However, there are three main nuclear sites, and I say main for a reason, because we only know what we know in terms of where, say, enriched uranium could be stored. We know those, but if we understand it's in those canisters, it could be a lot of different places, and that would change the whole calculus for boots on the ground, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. First of all, look at the distance that we're talking of. If we had forces here, or if the U.S. came ashore here, and you were going to try to put forces there, now you certainly wouldn't have to drive up there. I mean, you could have some aviation airborne operation to drop them in. But the challenge is these are monstrous facilities. And to your very point, the enriched uranium isn't necessarily here. It could be dispersed into military compounds, into somebody's backyard, into a garage, underground facilities, which are all along the mountains here. So if you get there, let me show you the significance of this. This is Natanz. This is a monster facility. This would eat up ground forces. Marines would have to guard intersections. They'd have to be here. They'd have to go into each one of these buildings. Is anything there? Right. And then once they get in a building, they don't know what they're looking at.
You have to clear it. You have to. Then there's what's underneath it, and then there's the other one.
Who's going to come in and say, "Yep, that's radioactive," or "No, that's inert"? And that takes other experts to have to be a part of this endeavor. Yeah. We did this in Iraq, the sensitive site exploitation mission. We did this in the early stages of Iraq. We found all those sites. It became very, very difficult. And every time we got one, we put experts in there to determine this equals something, this equals something.
Painstaking and excruciatingly time
and detailed, yes, ma'am.
When we talk about this mission to keep the straits open or to reopen them, they're not open right now. One of the things that Dan Kane, the chair of the Joint Chiefs, the general, told us the other day was that they are introducing now two new weapons here. The A-10 Warthog, this close infantry, close support fighter jet, is now flying missions over the strait, as well as Apache helicopters. What is the introduction of these two aircraft? What does that do to the conflict? Well, thank you, John. Well, this significantly increases our ability to attack small targets, so they're probably going after the thousands of small speedboats that the Iranians have on the coastline. I mean, you're talking about a 1,000-mile coastline. That's the entire west coast of the United States, from California to Washington State. And so the A-10 is an incredibly capable air-to-ground weapon, as is, of course, the Apache helicopter. And so this means that they've got the capability now to go after the smaller targets. Probably can also go after some of the launching sites for perhaps cruise missiles and other missile sites. And they can also go after small boats that are trying to lay mines and whatnot. So it greatly increases the capability of the United States to interdict small targets.
So we have the A-10 and we have the Apache flying over the straits now in some capacity, Alex. What does that mean if there is now this new mission to open the straits? What does that tell you about the state of play?
I mean, it speaks to mission creep. There's really no other way to describe it at this point. The White House and the Department of War laid out very clear, goals that had to be rectified a little bit. But essentially, it's, going after the missiles, the drones, the associated industrial base, the Navy, potentially the nuclear program. And obviously, we saw the decapitation strikes, who were largely the security leaders responsible for the deaths of the protesters. That was a 3 to 5 week mission, very clear set of targets that were defined by U.S. Central Command that they're working through right now. We call it Air Tasking Order. But this is a new military mission with new objectives here. So the president has tried a few things. There were strikes on Kharg Island that resulted in counterstrikes in infrastructure in the region. The Israelis struck the Pars gas field, which is right here, that then led to retaliatory strikes. 17% of Qatar's liquid natural gas is gone. $20 billion plant could take 3 to 5 years. So that didn't work. At this point, it looks like additional military forces are going to be needed to free this up.
Okay, you brought up Kharg Island here. I want to show people again where this is. This is the island. It's for the north of the Persian Gulf here. This is where there were airstrikes the other day. Barack Ravid in Axios is reporting there are serious discussions now about a ground operation, right? Because landing troops there would be ground troops, despite what some people say. A ground operation on Kharg, either occupied or otherwise, what would be needed for something like that?
Well, so what we're seeing now is several thousand Marines have been activated from Marine Expeditionary Units. Just for context, there are no infantry divisions or armored divisions, either from the U.S. Army or U.S. Marine Corps, that have been activated or mobilized. And Iran itself is a country of 90 million people that's extremely mountainous. We're not going to see a major ground invasion based on the force posture we see right now, but it is possible that those Marines could be used in amphibious landings here or to hold territory, as Kharg is 90% of Iran's oil basically flows there for loading.
General, right now, as Alex was saying there, we do think there is this Marine Expeditionary Unit headed to the region. We don't know exactly how close they are. They haven't arrived just yet, is our understanding. Would that be enough to take and hold Kharg Island? I think that
Coming up on this episode of Mind the Game. Us winning was forcing the networks to have to talk about basketball. And I know that's hard sometimes for some people to talk about basketball.
I think that probably would be a suitable mission for them. You're talking about 2,500 Marines with an air component. But the problem, of course, is once they get on the ground, it's a small island. It's only about 7.7 square miles, and it's probably lightly defended. But as Alex very rightly points out, this would be mission creep. And once you're on the ground, and you are a target. And I think of the political impact of losing soldiers, sailors, airmen, or Marines on the ground at a place like Kharg Island. That would be a tremendous blow. But, the president's stuck because he's got to do something to relieve the Strait of Hormuz. He just can't allow this to go on. And right now, with 1,500 ships out there waiting to get through the strait, it's going to take 3 months to get through that work off that backlog. And remember, they were restored. They had at the time about 100 ships a day, and no one's going through there. And of course, the Saudis now can't even produce oil now because there's nowhere to store it. So they've got to do something to relieve the strait.
CENTCOM has announced that they've dropped these, the military dropped these 5,000-pound guided bombs that are designed to penetrate targets deep underground. on Iranian missile sites along the strait on Tuesday. And you used to be deputy commander of the Air Force's entire bomber force. So, what can you tell us about those strikes and these bombs, what this can achieve, what it can't achieve?
Well, certainly the United States watches what our potential adversaries around the world are doing, and we've seen a trend in recent years of hardening and burying some critical infrastructure, some critical targets. And so the United States has developed over time, whether that's the GETR, which we saw in Midnight Hammer, going after very deep buried nuclear targets, or something like this 5,000-pound penetrator, the GBU-72. We've developed capabilities to exploit those targets, to go after and hit them, and they're very capable, and this was the first use in combat, and I suspect very effective.
So where do the capabilities kind of end here, right? Can the U.S. bomb the strait open, or does something else need to be done here?
Well, I think CENTCOM, U.S. Central Command, will have a very well-developed plan and a set of objectives that they're trying to accomplish. Like in any conflict, we have a very determined adversary, a thinking adversary, who's going to try to react, adapt to what we might be doing. I think it would be very difficult to say we can execute a bombing campaign and open the straits. But you do see a very successful effort so far to reduce Iran's ability to affect its neighbors, to reduce the drone and ballistic missile strikes by about 90% or more over the course of the campaign, to reduce the naval capabilities. And so their ability to affect operations in the straits has been greatly diminished. But I wouldn't expect that to be completely eliminated or go to zero.
Is there any way to do this without having some kind of, maybe even just limited, but nonetheless, boots on the ground when it comes to maybe being close to the shore? This is what we were talking yesterday about with our military experts, because I think the public really makes quite a distinction here when it comes to boots on the ground. Even if this isn't, very far inland in Iran, that is still, I think, something that really sticks with people, the idea of American boots on the ground. Do you expect that to happen?
Brad, I think that all comes down to the objectives that the administration is trying to achieve. And I think we've heard a range of possible objectives. I would say if we're looking to do some type of regime change, if we're anticipating that the leadership in Iran is going to turn over and a new regime come into place, that would be incredibly difficult given the current restraints against having boots on the ground. But I would again emphasize that we've seen a dramatic decrease in the amount of Iranian attacks and their ability to influence the region. They still can get a drone through, they still can get a missile through on occasion, but CENTCOM is continually going after that and trying to bring that level down to a great amount.
Can the strait be secured without boots on the ground?
I think you'll see a large effort to do that. I think you'll see us continue to push back Iranian capabilities. Whether that can be fully subdued without boots on the ground is an outstanding question. I think that we may see some capabilities that will dramatically influence that, but to say that we could eliminate Iran's ability to shut the strait down without boots on the ground is an open question.
They're 5,000-pound deep penetrator munitions on hardened Iranian missile strikes near the Strait of Hormuz.
I personally think that what's going to happen is the Marines are going to be taking Karg Island, Kersh, the island of Omar, and I think that there's the longer island that's north of the strait. I don't know the name of it. I think they're probably going to hold those islands, and by holding those islands, you're going to be able to surveil, and if there are speedboats or attack vessels coming from Iran, the Marines are going to be able to knock it out very quickly. So boots on the ground, I think, on those islands are essential, especially around the strait. Those three main islands are essential for securing the strait. Now, in terms of Karg Island, the United States takes that island. I think the United States should have ownership of the oil, not the Iranians. And let's think about this for a second here. It was American and also British, I believe, but American oil companies that built up the industry, and it was taken away from them during the revolution, the Iranian Revolution. So let's just keep that in mind. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the vitamin B complex. This will help to boost up your energy levels, improve the health of your mitochondria. The first 4 B vitamins are part of the electron transport chain to boost up your ATP. This will help to rev up your metabolism and help to protect neurons. Vitamin B12, which is in the B complex, will help to protect your neurons. Good Night Formula will help you to get into 3 to 5 cycles of deep sleep and REM sleep. That's really important to detoxify your central nervous system, to consolidate memory, and to be well rested. Having a good sleep regularly will help to slow down the aging process and improve your brain function. This has tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower. Take it every night and slow down the aging process. Olive leaf extract is dual purpose. It's going to help to boost up your immune system and help with your cardiovascular system. It brings down inflammation and helps to control your lipid profile. And if you're 40 years of age or older, please go to my store, get the Myotrol. This has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to help with the gene expression to build muscle and to maintain muscle. This will help to reduce atrophy. Make sure you do a little bit of resistance training. You don't have to do a lot. Take the Myotrol. This will help to build muscle. If you're an athlete, you will also benefit from this. So you don't have to just be 40 years of age or older. But if you're an athlete, younger or older, you'll benefit by taking Myotrol and increase strength for your sport. And lastly, I have structural nanosilver gels. You can get it in the tube form or the quick dispenser. Use it the same way. If you have a cut, an abrasion, or a minor burn, put it on the lesion. It'll help to heal it. You can use it as a daily skincare to improve your skin. And if you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, especially like the cold season, put it on your hands, around your eyes, around your ears, around your mouth, around your nose. Lightly coat your nostrils. It'll stay active for 5.5 hours. Get some structural nanosilver gel. Have it at home. Have it some at work. You never know when you need it. Make sure you use discount 5. You get $5 off any order. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video. Let's continue. But these 5,000-pound deep penetrating bombs near the strait is to destroy the hardened-in targets, degrade their capability, so when the Marines come in, it's going to be easier.
Exact locations. How significant would that be in neutralizing part of the threat to ships in the strait?
I think that's right answer, part of it, but I think we still got to remember there are hundreds, if not thousands, of speedboats that are hidden along that coastline.
And that's the key. You need the Marines and the Navy surveilling the area, protecting the area, policing the area, and knocking them out. And oh, by the way, U.S. Naval Institute did a video this week. And the individual that was being interviewed was one of the many war planners of this region. So when the mainstream media has been saying that the Pentagon and the president didn't have a plan, and this was knee-jerk reaction, that is completely false. This plan that is being executed is years in the making. Years. Now, it's been tweaked a little bit, but what they're doing has been planned for years. Now, if you don't believe me, go to U.S. Naval Institute. The video is there. Was released this week. Listen to it. And the individual that's being interviewed is one of the many war planners for this operation.
Site as commercial vehicles.
Literally speedboats, the kind you would see out recreation.
Yes, when you see cigarette boats that basically can shoot missiles at big ships, our ships, tankers. So until we can eliminate that threat, I still think we're not going to be considered militarily successful through the strait, and the commercial success won't be for a
I
while.
mean, with the USS Cole, we saw what one speedboat like that can do to a vessel.
And our tankers are much, much larger. During the tanker war, it took 3 or 4 different hits on a tanker to sink it. But nonetheless, when you got a couple of hundred, if not thousands, speedboats, they can put a lot of pain on those tankers.
Do you also agree that this is likely to go on for a week?
Yeah, especially if we do try to form a coalition. It's important to understand that we don't have nearly the capability to bring up the mines, to escort the tankers, to escort all the equipment that we did in the first tanker war. We've got about 50 helicopters that can spot them, but we only have 4 boats, 4 entire boats in the Navy that can actually do mine countermeasure. Huge numbers, probably 10 times that amount in other countries, especially among the Europeans. We can't open the strait.
Is that because we just haven't put much emphasis on mine clearing?
I had a Navy guy tell me the other day that the last thing surface warfare would ever want to do is work in a wooden hulled boat. And those are wooden hulled boats to avoid magnetic signatures.
Just in general, what are you watching right now? Like what should people be watching?
To me, we've got to understand that the Iranian government is not fighting a war, they're fighting a resistance. And in a resistance operation, you win by not losing. And they think we're losing by not winning. So what I'm watching more than anything else is what's going to happen with the government. Are they going to fight, or are they going to resist to the last man? I think that's why Brett says this is going to take
And I
least 3
think
weeks.
also a key indicator of the success is, are the secular part of the society within Iran willing to rise up and fight against the IRGC and the theocratic regime? Well, right now it seems as though they're not. Why? This is scary. Because if the people of Iran are not willing to fight for their own freedoms, then this is dangerous for us. So if in another week or 2, we don't see major uprising within the Iranian secular part of society, then we need to really start ramping this thing down. Kick the shit out of them and get out. Because if they're not willing to fight for their own freedoms, they're not willing to fight for.
But the enemy has a vote, and they may want to drag this out as long as they can.
In a sense, is the U.S. fighting an insurgent?
They are fighting in very many ways the standard insurgency tactics, which is you've got the watches, we've got the time.
We're not going to put long duration boots on the ground presence in Iran. I don't think that's ever been an objective in terms of the strategy going, from the outset of this campaign. So I do believe that the Marines coming in are going to provide Commander CENTCOM some great agility in terms of potentially going after some of those shore-based or onshore or near-shore based locations that can threaten into the Strait of Hormuz and also into the Gulf of Oman as you're entering from the east. But I don't believe we'll put them on the ground for a long duration of time.
Okay, so explain to us what that would look like. Getting on shore, how far on shore, staying on shore, the dangers of being on shore, because I think those are questions that a lot of people will have looking at this.
Yes, so
You want to file free?
Yes, so the capability that's coming in with the Marine Amphibious Ready Group, they have the Osprey, which is a tilt rotor aircraft. I think most are familiar with now. So they have that means to get onshore. They also have landing craft as part of their as part of the element coming in terms of for infiltration and exfiltration onshore, over the beach type operations. So there's a lot of capability there. So the options of getting onto land, that would typically be for a short duration operation. The Marines historically, you set aside Iraq and Afghanistan are long, multi-decade wars. The Marines typically go in to establish a lodgment or a beachhead to support for follow-on forces. So absent of that, because we don't have any indication that there are follow-on forces coming in, I could see them supporting going after potentially weapons storage sites that maybe have not been able to get completely eliminated, from the air. Or also, as we discussed previously, one of the missions that the Marines have, the Marine Expeditionary Unit, is to support a special operation. So if there is one, they could serve as that outer cordon of security. All of those are high risk, Brianna, because even though we've done a great job of eliminating the ballistic missile threat, there's still a lot of artillery that exists within the Iranian conventional forces and a lot of short-range rockets, other capabilities that we haven't specifically targeted yet. So that's definitely a concern going forward.
So, and I hear what you're saying, that this might be limited. They might not be that far on shore, but that would be troops on the ground. Would that fundamentally change the nature of this war? Because certainly in the eyes of the American public, it very likely will.
I don't think it would change the nature of the desired outcome in terms of the objectives that the administration has set.
I want to switch over to Bloomberg here. Their take on Trump is saying that he's considering winding down the operations. Now, my take on his definition of winding down means that the major operations from knocking out their military capabilities will start to wind down. But then the next phase of this operation will take hold, and that is the Marines. So that huge second wave that he was talking about, and third wave, all right, that's ramping down. But boots on the ground, at least minimal boots on the ground, is going to happen. And I think it's going to also be in conjunction with the Israelis getting boots on the ground.
Here to help us break it down, we have Amir Abu Omar. She's Bloomberg News Deputy UAE Bureau Chief. Thank you so much for joining us. Scotty Whitehouse is with us here at the table. She is a White House reporter for Bloomberg. And we also have Konstantin Torpin. He's the AP's Pentagon reporter. Amir, I want to start with you. It was, I'm loath to say, but almost slightly quieter overnight. There were still some attacks, including this rocket that went towards this base in the Indian Ocean. Can you just kind of give us the update, what happened overnight, what you were seeing throughout your region, and where we start the morning?
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning. Look, I mean, the intensity of the Iran attacks has lessened, but that doesn't mean that they haven't been happening across different Arab Gulf regions. Now, some things that we're looking at essentially is that this is the third week of the war, but the intensity or the degree of Iranian attacks has been continuing. And as a matter of fact, we can say that they've reached new heights because Iran is now retaliating against some of the key energy infrastructures in the Arab Gulf. Over the week, they've attacked multiple ones, including Qatar's largest LNG plant that wiped out potentially 17% of LNG exports across the globe. This is the Ras Laffan plant in Doha. And Qatar did come out and say that it will take 3 to 5 years to fully repair those key plants in its territories. And those LNG exports are going to have an impact across different countries in Asia, like China and South Korea, but also those in Europe, including Belgium, for example, and Italy. This is what Qatar said. And this is not just in Qatar, this is just one of the widest attacks that have happened over the past week. And as you know, LNG is not like crude in the way it works because we don't have reserves. We can't have a policy response to replace missing LNG exports. So it's set to have massive impacts across the LNG industry, unlike what is happening with crude, which is already at 112, WTI close to 100. So we're seeing those big moves as a result of President Donald Trump's administration's commentary overnight. So that is what we're seeing across oil markets. But when it comes to LNG, this is again a massive move, and we're looking forward to what more Iran or what Iran is going to target next. But it looks like the retaliation is not stopping. What we've seen overnight, the attacks on the British airbase, that's also something that we did not, or the U.S. administration, according to our sources, had not factored in. Iran had the ability to do. So yes, since the start of the war 3 weeks ago, or over 20 days ago, across the Middle East, we've seen the number of attacks from Iran slightly lessen. But that doesn't mean that the parameters of this war have not been intensifying across the region.
Skylar, that's the backdrop to what we're hearing from the President of the United States. He's, of course, taking note of all that's happening within the region and looking at the market response as well, which has been significant since the start of this conflict. How do you square that, what we're seeing, this conflict continuing to widen, show no signs of slowing down? Yes, he ruled out the prospects of a ceasefire, but that begs the question of if military action on the U.S.'s part were to cease, what would Iran's response to that be going forward here? Parse, if you could, that statement that we got from the president last night, that 5-point statement about objectives that he says the U.S. has reached or is close to reaching.
I think it's a very interesting statement that we saw from the president yesterday, especially as earlier in that day he ruled out a ceasefire, and then now he's saying that they're going to be winding down the war. So it is very interesting that the president sort of adjusted his tone very quickly, and it almost makes you wonder who got in his ear, what happened behind the scenes. I mean, that's something we're all trying to figure out, is what were those conversations like behind the scenes that sort of shifted the president's thinking around this war. And I think one thing to note more broadly here in the US is for President Trump, the Republican Party, the administration, it is a midterm here in the US. And obviously with higher cost of oil, gas prices here in the US, they're having to navigate that as the November elections near. And especially at a time where US service members have been killed. And it's, it raises questions on if we are going to, when I say we, the administration, if they're going to continue with this war, how much is it, I guess, worth it if especially, there's the risk of troops continuing to be wounded and killed.
And on that note, I mean, putting American forces in harm's way, Constantine, I want to ask you, there's been successive reporting about whether or not the president will use ground troops, and he's been asked about it, and whether or not he really wants to go in and hold Card Island. And we've got some reporting from Axios that says the Trump administration is considering plans to occupy or blockade that island to pressure Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. I was reading this week that an amphibious assault, if this administration does decide to go forward with that, won't look like the ones we've seen in the past when we think D-Day and those kinds of boats. One of those carriers doesn't even really have a well to launch those boats. What are the odds of that assault happening, and what will it look like if it does?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question.
Today, business happens virtually everywhere. That's why you need Supermobile from T-Mobile. In moments of high demand, T-Mobile's network adapts. Put your business connection first. Supermobile, the best business plan on the best network.
I need to manage multiple entities on multiple platforms. Using Intuit ERP, the AI native ERP that's powerful, painless, and proven.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. So the U.S. military has now sent 2 separate Marine Expeditionary Units towards the Middle East. One was coming from one was doing exercises off the island of Taiwan. It has been rerouted to the Middle East, and that group is made up of 2 amphibious assault ships led by the USS Tripoli. And then yesterday, we reported that the USS Boxer Amphibious Readiness Group, that's made up of 3 amphibious assault ships, that's heading to the Middle East as well. So sort of to answer your question, it certainly appears that one of the options that's being teed up here is to have U.S. Marines seize the island via the ocean.
But do you think, will that look like what we're picturing with fast boats and men in the water, or is there a modern version of that? I was reading that it's more likely to be kind of a targeted assault with like choppers coming off these carriers, fewer men in the water, and more of an air assault being launched from these boats. I don't know if that's even something you can answer at this point, but I just found that interesting because when I think amphibious assault, I guess my brain is still going Saving Private Ryan.
Right. I mean, if I think if the military does go down that path, which to be clear, we don't have any indication sort of one way or the other. But yeah, I think it'll probably be a blend of the two. I doubt it's going to be absolutely Saving Private Ryan with sort of waves and waves of amphibious assault craft. But I think it'll look a little bit like that. I mean, the Marine Corps still utilizes modern versions of those kinds of crafts. So probably some version therein.
I want to go to the Strait of Hormuz, the traffic that we've seen or the lack thereof, and Bloomberg's reporting that an Indian tanker did get through. We've seen kind of a series of this happening over the course of the last week, a handful of vessels getting through. If the flags of those vessels, if those countries are able to communicate with Tehran and negotiate some sort of deal here. Can you just get us up to speed on what that negotiation has been like, the degree to which some traffic has returned here, and sort of what is still on the minds of carriers and captains and insurers as this conflict continues?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the Strait of Hormuz remains in effect closed, and that is one of the things that have been sort of a sticky point since the onstart of this war. The Iranian regime still has pretty much control over the Strait of Hormuz, where, as you know, a fifth of the world's oil exports go through. And so that was something that President Trump yesterday said that he's not worried about it, open itself up. But as you guys have mentioned throughout the past 10 minutes, he then went back and said actually winding down operations or the military presence in Iran. So it's still something that is being discussed. Now, it doesn't help that over the past week, Iran's chief security advisor, Ali Larijani, was killed. Now, he was seen as someone who was sat at the table pre-war, who was sat at the table along with other figures that have been killed. And so we have our own sources telling us that Western intelligence at this point thinks that the killing of Ali Larijani practically means that it will be harder for countries, including the UK and France and other countries in Europe, to have their ships escorted through Iran. And as you remember, President Trump did say earlier that the US will try to get ships escorted through the Strait of Hormuz. But that is a very costly task that hasn't reaped a lot of fruit, as we've seen so far. So effectively, the Strait of Hormuz, yes, there has been a little bit more movement. The AP reported last week that we've seen 90 tankers or so move through. That is way, way below the numbers that we used to see before the onstart of this war in the Middle East.
Skylar, before we have to go, I do want to ask you about this OPEC waiver, these sanctions waivers that the White House issued. Who does that really benefit? Because when you look at it, the U.S. does not buy Iranian oil. Most of that Iranian oil is already spoken for by China. So essentially, didn't the White House just give China a discount on oil and let Iran make money from oil the U.S. didn't want it to sell?
That's a great question. I think...
What is the White House saying about why this is a good thing? Let's go this way.
Okay, perfect. So, I think the administration, what they're trying to do, really anything...
This is common sense. And this is the problem what I'm seeing on a lot of mainstream media is that, one, the actual anchor is stupid. And two, the people that they're interviewing are stupid. The reason why it's happening is to put less pressure on the actual futures price in natural gas and in oil. It's that simple. You're from Bloomberg, you should know this. All right, don't you come out of the womb with, a strong understanding of economics and finance? I mean, come on.
Surrounding this war, they want it to appear as a positive for Americans. Even if talk about the Strait of Hormuz, trying to get
goods through, can't get fertilizer through, planting season for farmers is starting. So they're trying to sort of spin anything that can look positive for Americans here in the US. And yeah, I mean, that raises questions because look, President Trump was supposed to go to China. I was supposed to be going to China next weekend. So, you know,
White House reporter. White House reporter. I'm coming to the conclusion that people that are in journalism, they're just stupid. They're just stupid people, especially in mainstream. It's called Nash equilibrium, bitch. It's really simple. Sometimes you have to give up something where the whole system is better off.
Is now delayed / postponed. So there are tons of questions.
Is it just about trying to show that they're doing something?
Yes, because I think so many people, when this war started, and still now, even though the president is laying out these bullet points, everyone is still really trying to figure out what was the goal or the mission of this war that was started. And even if the president says it's winding down, he's still eyeing sending 2,000 plus Marines to the Middle East, and that doesn't sound like winding down if you're saying you're winding down.
Or if you're being
No. He's winding down the actual wave that is happening now. We hit over 8,000 targets. So he's winding down that part of the operation and now securing, the next phase is securing the strait and probably behind the scenes, an overthrow of the IRGC and theocratic regime officially by the people. That's what he means. But he talks like he's from New York. All right? So you got to like translate it. You got to translate New York into like common English.
Thank you so much.
All right. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the structural nano silver drops and lozenges. The moment you have that throat irritation, take them right away to mitigate. Now, you can get it in blueberry, cherry flavor, honey, and lemon. Very high quality, made from structural nano silver. They'll help to neutralize. I also have them in orange splash for the lozenges. It has extra vitamin C and Manuka honey. Get a few bags for your household. You never know when you need it. Take them during the cold season, the allergy season. The moment you have that throat irritation, take them right away. Also, little tip, if you're cleaning, let's say you're doing spring cleaning and it's dusty, you want to take these right during and after you're doing your cleaning to mitigate any thing that you're breathing in, any dust that you're breathing in that can cause some sort of throat irritation. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the drops and lozenges. Very high quality. Resveratrol. This will help to slow down the aging process so you're not a stupid reporter from Bloomberg. All right? This is going to soak up free radicals, help the health of your mitochondria. You're going to boost up energy levels. This will help with youthful gene expression. Get rid of cells that are in senescence. Having cells that are in senescence are bad for you. Why? Because it collects lipofuscin, garbage. And when your tissues are full of garbage, do you think your organ systems will perform? Well, the answer is no. Resveratrol will slow down the aging process. This stacks really well with C60, especially for the skin. And oh, by the way, you take resveratrol regularly, you'll slow down the aging process. Omega-3, super important for your cardiovascular health. Omega-3 will bring down systemic inflammation and help control your lipid profile, help to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. When you do that, you're reducing plaque formation. And ashwagandha root helps to control cortisol levels and helps to control your blood glucose levels. It brings down inflammation. And when you're bringing down inflammation, you're helping your immune system and your endocrine system, your brain function, and your cardiovascular system. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com and get the ashwagandha route so you're not a stupid Bloomberg reporter. All right. Now, what I want to do is listen into DW's take on, is Trump done with Iran? Again, him saying winding down is basically the major air campaign that he's been doing the last 3 weeks. Now the next phase. Now you have to remember, and a lot of the mainstream media is going to say, he doesn't know what he's doing and this is unplanned and blah, blah, blah. This has been in the works with the Pentagon for years, and it's going to plan.
Experience an empowered ecosystem designed to deliver actionable insights that inspire growth and sustainability so you could see further, innovate faster, accomplish more. That's the Connect effect.
Hello. Sitcoms are back. How's that? Funny, complicated, single. Don't tell my husband. This is DW News. We are streaming live from Berlin. I'm Melissa Chan, and we're here to give you the latest on the Iran war, where things stand 3 weeks into the conflict, heading into the 4th week. And we'll be speaking to 2 analysts, plus our correspondent in Jerusalem. Now, I have my laptop with me to keep an eye on what those in the chat via YouTube or TikTok might be saying, and I will grab any questions you might have, which I will pass on to those experts joining us. Thanks, Magic, I believe, and Ross Evans for joining the chat so far. Don't be shy, post your questions and comments, and we will forward them to our group of experts and our correspondent. Now,
you notice how she opened up her show? We're beginning the 4th week. Well, she could have said, we just ended the 3rd week. Which one sounds better? See what I mean? It's all about framing. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the magnesium and zinc so it improves your brain function so you can pick up the bullshit that's on mainstream media. Magnesium and zinc will also help to boost up your immune system. And take it with vitamin C and magnesium. Vitamin C and magnesium will help with your skin, brain function, and immune system. And magnesium improves the efficacy of vitamin D3.
Of where things stand. U.S. President Donald Trump has sent conflicting signals over what he intends to do next, as he has so many times over the past few weeks. So let's start with this soundbite. Have a listen.
Well, look, we can have dialogue, but I don't want to do a ceasefire. You don't do a ceasefire when you're literally obliterating the other side. They don't have a Navy. They don't have an Air Force. They don't have any equipment. They don't have any spotters. They don't have anti-aircraft. They don't have radar. And their leaders have all been killed at every level. We're not looking to do that.
So he doesn't seek a ceasefire, but he also suggests things may be winding down, as you can see from this Truth social media post. We're going to pull that up, where he talks about, quote, winding down military efforts because he claims of the deep degradation of Iranian military capabilities. And then he goes on to say, quote, the Hormuz Strait will have to be guarded and policed as necessary by other nations who use it. Now that might be news to these other nations. The American president seems to believe he can just walk away from the conflict if he wants to, but can he really do that? So without further ado, we're going to bring in Willem Alberg, who's a former NATO official and now a senior fellow with the Pacific Fund, which is a think tank based in Honolulu. And later, in a few minutes later, we will have Sarah Kamanian of the International Relations Department at the University of Sussex. But first, William, welcome. You've spoken to DW News quite a number of times over the past few weeks. What do you make of Trump's soundbite just now, and then his post about a wind down?
I think there's a real
dichotomy within the US government as to exactly what the war aims are in this conflict with Iran. Do they want complete regime change, as in a government that's acceptable to the United States, or do they want to just degrade Iranians' military capabilities, especially its missile capabilities? Are we going to go after the nuclear highly enriched uranium? 440.9 kilograms of which is still unaccounted for. So I think the shifting war aims, plus the market pressure, the huge spike in oil prices, which is going to drive inflation, which is going to raise the price of everything. Even though Trump has said we don't need Iranian oil, it does mean that the oil prices are spiking, and that will have effects. And I think Trump is incredibly sensitive to those sort of market shifts, which could have a huge effect on midterm elections in the United States.
Now, William, I think one of the reasons, if I can say so, as a former correspondent who's based in the United States as well, is that there's a lot of infighting within the White House. So the president seems to be changing his mind in part because of that infighting. Do we have a sense, for example, of where Vice President J.D. Vance stands in relation to National Security Advisor and Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and so on?
Well, you hate to psychoanalyze people from afar, but just based on their past positions, you would say that J.D. Vance was very much against further engagements in the Middle East and the so-called forever wars. On the other hand, Rubio has been much more of a classic Republican neocon, willing to take U.S. interests overseas and engage in conflicts where necessary. And then Hegseth just seems to like to blow stuff up. It's really difficult to discern any sort of longer-term strategy from that fella. But I would say that you're right that within the MAGA movement, there is this very strong group fed by Trump's promises not to engage in forever wars, not to get mixed up in the Middle East, versus those who really do want to use U.S. power, want to build up so much U.S. power and wield that anywhere in the world anytime and feel like it. And those two groups are really tearing each other apart. And you can see sort of the internecine warfare within the MAGA movement between those who support this war and those who wonder why in the world we're fighting it. It's very interesting. We'll see how that plays out politically on the bigger stage.
And I want to welcome others in the chat who are posting, Green, Jerry, and Dave. Thank you very much. I'm going to keep asking William a few questions, and then we'll look at your comments and questions that you provide. Now, William, meanwhile, in the last few hours, Iran says there has been a U.S.-Israeli attack on its Natanz uranium enrichment facility. Israel, just in the last hour or so, has said it was not aware of this attack. Now, you're a nuclear non-proliferation expert. What does this latest attack mean? And long-term, are Iran's nuclear capabilities set back?
So, Iran had the ability to enrich uranium at 3 sites. One was at a place called Fordo, and then 2 sites within Natanz, one on the surface and one deeply buried. We're pretty sure that those facilities have all been hit very, very hard and knocked out of operation. However, Iran was building a 3rd facility at Natanz, just to the southwest of the other 2 facilities. And we saw work on tunnels before the June strikes last year. And we've seen some work happening in between June and this most recent outbreak of conflict. So it may be that they're striking that facility. But I am surprised because I don't think there's really any capabilities there. There may be some storage for centrifuges in some of the tunnel complexes. But really the prize is, as I mentioned before, the highly enriched uranium, which we believe is stored underground in Esfahan, and they have been buried in the rubble there. Now, it may be that some of the uranium is still at Natanz or Fordo, and maybe they're trying to destroy that in place rather than to try to risk a ground operation to go in and seize the material. But it's still very unclear. Yeah, so there is a substantial amount of 60% enriched, highly enriched uranium in gaseous form in these big metal containers in Iran, and getting them, accounting for them, or destroying them will be a key war aim. Trump may be wanting to finish that so he can declare some sort of victory.
William, just for those who might not understand, including myself, frankly, the science behind this, to what extent can you bomb to the point of trying to get rid of this uranium. And isn't that dangerous? Could that set off a chain reaction? I think there's a lot of questions around the safety of that strategy.
Yeah, so these are just basically large metal tanks that contain uranium hexafluoride gas that has been enriched. So it's been enriched up to 60%. You would then have to take that gas and turn it into a solid form and turn that solid form into metal so that you could make a metal pit that would be the center of a bomb. And you'd need, for high-enriched uranium, somewhere around 25 kilograms of 90% enriched uranium. And so this stuff is dangerous. It is close to bomb-making quality, but it is not in and of itself dangerous. I mean, if one of these tanks exploded in the room here, I'd be dead. But if I were a block away, I would be fine. The amount of potential radiation release from destroying these metal containers filled with uranium gas is very low. Again, it's toxic to breathe in, but it's not going to have huge radiation effects. And it's also uranium. So uranium emits alpha particles, which can be stopped by clothing. This isn't like a Chernobyl scenario. This is more like, a temporary gaseous release that would be dangerous for people on site, but nowhere else. So there's no real danger of any kind of fissile explosion or any kind of radiation release that you would be able to detect from far off sites.
So absent boots on the ground, this is the best alternative as a strategy?
It's rough because even from the air, you're still going to have a very tough time knowing whether you've destroyed all of these containers because we're talking about dozens and dozens of these containers, and I would be loath to try to be able to tell whether or not we had hit them, considering they're buried probably under tons of dirt and concrete right now. So they may just want to pound the facilities a lot so they have some higher confidence that it's been destroyed. But yeah, boots on the ground are really the only way, which is why the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, has been begging Iran for some kind of idea of the condition of these tanks and some sort of access so that they can account for them. And absent that, there's going to be a real question, no matter how much bombing you do, as to whether you've destroyed it all or not.
I mean, I think the big question, and one, it will be difficult to say, but given the conflict over the past 3 weeks, there's very little incentive for Tehran to not want to pursue nuclear weapons outright after this, whenever this ends, correct?
There's so much data. We'll be building models all night.
Nope. I'm using Saspaya to build models and make decisions. We're done.
So you don't want these 15 pizzas?
Nobody said that.
The pizzas stay. This is their home now.
From data to ta-da, Saspaya.
It's a big question because you'd have to say, from the Iranian government's point of view, first of all, the steps they took towards a bomb, and we do not know if Iran has actually ever made the decision to build nuclear weapons. They've taken steps in that regard. They've designed a program and they've taken steps towards a bomb, but it does not appear that they actually made the decision to build an individual bomb or multiple bombs. So in the wake of this conflict, where they were hedging by going closer and closer on that spectrum towards bomb making, if they would bet that the best way to safety would be to build one, I think that would be a terrible bet. In fact, it's these steps they've taken that they thought would increase their security or at least increase their leverage in the negotiations that gave Israel the excuse to bomb Iran in the first place back last year and has been one of the stated war aims this year. So I think if Iran decided to race towards a bomb now, that would be the one way to guarantee U.S. troops on the ground in Iran. That would be the one way to guarantee a campaign even worse than the one that we're seeing now in terms of lethality for Iran. So I would hope they would not make that bet because I think they've lost the bet so far and they will go on losing that bet if they continue down this path. And it's not like a nuclear weapon would have magical safety effects for Iran. It wouldn't be a magic shield. Remember, Iran and Israel have been exchanging missiles for a long time. And if Israel, with a nuclear arsenal, can be attacked by Iran, then why would Iran think that one nuclear weapon is somehow going to make it safe?
William, I want to pivot, but I want to apologize to folks who are posting in chat. We are aware that there are technical issues with the YouTube live stream, a little bit glitchy, just in terms of us coming across as pixelated faces. Unfortunately, I'm looking at the computer myself, and it's not looking great. But hopefully, there goes the latency issue. But we're working on that, and hopefully, you'll be able to hear.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the probiotics. Probiotics are very important to improve your health. Good health starts at the gut. You can get it in veggie cap form or in powdered form. I prefer the powder form because I mix it with soft foods, but both are very high quality. By taking a good probiotic, you're going to improve your gut by allowing the inflammation to go down. Your mucosal lining will improve. Your immune system will improve. The communication between your gut and your liver and your gut and your brain will improve. You'll sleep better. Your skin will improve. You'll get rid of that brain fog. Your memory will improve. And guess what? You get healthier. So please go to my store, get the very high quality probiotics, take them every day. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video. Make sure you use discount 5 so you save some money. You know, energy's gone down.
The rest of this conversation pretty clearly. Now, William, the other interesting development are these U.S. media reports of Iran launching ballistic missiles at the joint U.S.-UK base on the island of Diego Garcia in the middle of the Indian Ocean. I'm going to try to pull up a map to show you just how far away it is.
Now, this is interesting. This is interesting. So our military, at least what we telegraphed, our intelligence and our military, intelligence agencies and our military, thought, at least we projected that we thought, that Iran only had a certain range for their missiles. All right, short range. Well, you know, so it's just in the Middle Eastern region. Well, the range is farther out, almost double. So that means that not only can they attack all of the Middle East, they can attack parts of Europe. Now, this is interesting because Europe thought that it's not our war, we don't have to worry about it. It's the only thing we care about is the Strait. Well, no. Now, it's very possible that Iran, even with the Europeans telegraphing that are going to help somewhat in the region, the Iranians are now saying, well, if you help, we can hit you now. So now, what is the Europeans going to do? Are they going to get involved? Or are they going to be, oh, we're afraid now? I'd give it 50-50 chance either way.
Now, this island, Diego Garcia, is part of the Chagos Islands, and this missile attack is based on information from U.S. media reports, getting information from U.S. officials, and the reports also suggest that the missiles have missed. There's been no confirmation from Iran about this. I'm curious about your take about this, frankly, this new development, if that is the case, because this conflict is growing farther and farther. I remember in the first week, there was the attack on the Iranian ship close to the coast of Sri Lanka. This is not just a Middle East conflict.
Right, so imagine the merging of trusted intelligence into a unified experience. Imagine collaboration amongst teams and across continents. Imagine an empowered ecosystem inspiring actionable insights.
Imagine you not buying into all of this AI BS. Wow, you could have made a dashboard on Excel and just hit the refresh button. But a lot of people buy into this AI BS and creating your dashboards using AI because they weren't very good at Excel.
That's the connect effect.
What's the fastest way to locate?
Right. So, the Chagos Islands are about 4,000 kilometers from Iran. And it does appear that Iran had launched 2 missiles, according to Wall Street Journal reporting 2 missiles fired at the Chagos Islands. And one of them apparently broke up on its own. And the report is the U.S. fired missile defense system at that missile. There's no word as to whether it intercepted it or it, again, fell apart on its own. What this looks like is more of a symbolic attack than anything else. It is possible that they've taken one of their really longer range missiles that we thought had a range limit of about 2,000 kilometers, like the Khorram Shahar 4, and it carries like a 1-ton payload. So if you eliminated the payload entirely or reduced it to just a very small symbolic amount of explosives, that would extend the range. But these are going to be incredibly inaccurate, incredibly unreliable, and this is much more of a symbolic gesture. And the fact that neither of them reached Diego Garcia just demonstrates that what I think Iran's trying to do is to sort of shock the United States, to put in strategic shock. That's why they've been, saving missiles and dosing, small amounts of missiles every day, and trying to find ways to destabilize the situation and to do something asymmetric. But it really does appear that this was, sort of a one-off attack to try to shock the West rather than to have a real military effect. And of course, the message that it sends is if Iran had missiles that could range 4,000 kilometers, then that puts a lot of Europe under the Iranian missile threat. That was one reason why the previous Ayatollah had limited Iran's missiles to 2,000 kilometers in range. And that was a self-limiting promise, so it's not a binding promise. And this may just be demonstrating, that the old Khomeini is dead and the gloves are off and all that kind of stuff. But we still assess that Iran's current missile arsenal can't really go effectively much beyond 2,500, 3,000 kilometers. So again, this is more of a political gesture or a shock gesture rather than a military capability that puts a place like Diego Garcia or mainland Europe under threat.
Yeah, and you talk about political gesture, but of course also Chagos Islands, Diego Garcia is also part of a complicated dispute, right? Because the base belongs to the UK, but the UK has been in the process of transferring sovereignty of that territory to the country of Mauritius, and that transfer has been criticized by Trump as well. So it's a little messy of a situation and puts the UK in a difficult situation as well with this development. Now, I do want to bring in Sarah Kermanian of the International Relations Department at the University of Sussex in the UK. Sarah, thank you for your patience and welcome to DW News. Thank you for having me. I want to let's just move into talking about what's happening internally in Iran. And William is still going to be here. So William, please do also join into and stay with this conversation. Sarah, there seems to be the contours of some kind of war strategy from Iran. They appear to be sort of focused on degrading U.S. capabilities, hitting missile bases, military bases, and in an effort to continue to also remind the Gulf states of the cost of its relations with the U.S. It has even struck non-military targets there. Do you think that reflects at least a semblance of a core leadership in the country, that it has some kind of control? Because in the early days, it looks and it felt as if Iran was just hitting wherever it could.
Well, it kind of shows, as some of the internal experts have talked about it, a core leadership when it was designed, when the war strategy was designed at the time that Khomeini was not yet dead. That is still in place, and that is how the rest of the IRGC seems to be following his lead. At the moment, it seems that this is the probably most accurate guess one can make, that most of the leadership of the war in the country is in the hand of a group of IRGC generals. They're not high-rank generals because most of them are dead,
but it's still, it is IRGC generals that are basically following the predetermined strategy, which is very, very obvious. It's just asymmetric war strategy.
Well, the question is the ones that are still alive, are they coordinating? Is it a top-down hierarchical type of organization, or is it horizontal organization where they can be almost autonomous individual cells within the IRGC? Based on the mainstream coverage that I have seen, a lot of the military experts are saying that it's more horizontal organization now, not hierarchical.
And clear what they are doing. And they're following that. In order to understand how the Islamic Republic really operates, we need to realize that it is not really a status political structure. It's just based on a vertical division of powers. It's something that the United States was well aware of, and they were worried about this war that they are putting themselves into, because this is the distribution of kind of connections and lines of loyalty is quite decentralized. It's not just even horizontal. It's very decentralized. It's based on ideological alliances. So even though the leader is dead, and even though some kind of Christians were kind of beginning to show themselves in the first days, still it seems that the core of IRGC leadership, which is still there, they are following the strategy that was previously designed. And yes, as you said, it is an asymmetric war strategy. And do you have any sense, and I know that this has just happened fairly recently, but with US President Donald Trump saying that he's considering winding down operations, do you have a sense of how Tehran and the leadership there might be thinking about that? Do they also welcome a wind down?
Wind down means that we're not going to be hitting as many targets from our missiles or from our aircraft. But there's going to be a new phase of the operation, and that's the Marines. And maybe even intelligence agencies to do an
But of course, as always in war, it's not just the United States that has a vote in this. Other countries involved in this conflict have a vote. What is your sense of what Iran wants to do? Would it try to continue this fighting just to make it more painful for the United States and for the Gulf countries so that they don't try to attack Iran ever again? Well, she said that we don't want a ceasefire. We want an end to this war. And what is an end to this war? It's probably like the U.S. coming into some sort of agreement with the United States, sanctions being removed, because as long as the sanctions are there, then basically they are there for a reason. So this conflict could be escalated ever again in
Now, what's important is when Trump made this announcement that he wants to wind down, and again, I believe it's going into the next phase, which is taking some of the islands and policing and controlling the strait, maybe even taking the oil from Carg Island. The S&P 500 closed on Friday in New York at 6,506. That's below the first support level of 6,600. The next support level is 6,450. It's only 56 points away from that. So if the markets feel, so first of all, Trump is saying what he's saying to try to calm down the markets. If the markets believe that there's going to be some sort of de-escalation, a ramp down, a wind down, then the S&P 500 should rally on Monday. Now, in terms of oil for WTI is trading at $98 a barrel, and Brent crude is trading at $106 per barrel. If there's going to be a wind down, we might see WTI starting to trade at 95. Now, the spread between Brent crude and WTI is usually about $4 in normal times. It's now $8. It's $8 spread. Now the question is which one does Brent crude go down, or is WTI going up to get to that normal spread of $4? No one really knows. In addition, the cash settlement for the futures market versus the actual physical delivery, that that dynamics is different. Actually, actual delivery transaction is higher for Brent crude. It's closer to 150, 125 per barrel than the actual paper settlement in the futures market. So does that mean that oil is going to go up soon? So I think this is another reason why Trump is making these statements at the end of the month. Now, for natural gas is trading at 3.095. Natural gas wants to go below 3. But because of what's happening, especially with the hit of South Pars, it went all the way up to 3.2. So if the markets really believe that Trump will be winding down operations, then we should see natural gas break $3 and go down. And WTI go down to maybe about 95 or break 95 and start trading closer to 93 for WTI. So that's my assessment with the markets. Now, if they don't believe, the markets don't believe Trump, then what's going to happen is the S&P 500 is going to test that major support level of 6,450, and it might break it. It might break and go further down. And we'll reassess what the next major support level is. And oil is probably going to test 100 again for WTI. And Brent crude's probably going to be trading closer to 110.
Can't see that because of course, the U.S. has upper hand militarily, but because it's lower threshold of basically the cost it is paying in this war is much higher than the Islamic Republic, which has higher resilience because they're fighting for their survival. So of course, now that the war has started, they would prefer to inflict as much cost as possible on the United States, as you just said. But something that is important in what Trump suggested is that he conditioned that winding down of the attacks on basically an agreement that would transfer the control of the Strait of Hormuz to other states in the region. And Iran is not going to really accept it easily. Of course, they're going to, even if that control of the Strait of Hormuz is transferred to, or Trump supports other Gulf states to control the Strait of Hormuz, Iran is going to probably start continue retaliation attacks on their territory. So this can actually lead to other forms of escalation in the region, but I don't think it actually could be winded down easily as Trump wanted. Trump has put himself really in a war that he's looking for an exit, but unfortunately that exit cannot really come as easily as he wants it to be.
Okay, this is a question for both Sarah.
It's Sarah, the Duchess of York. How did you come to this?
Okay, this is a question for both Sarah and William. Speaking of the region, let's pull out a bit more because more and more countries might be drawn into this war. As you say, even as Trump talks about winding down operations. I want to just quickly give a shout. A lot more comments in the chat, but Tommy Dancing Tommy says, elect a clown and get a circus. Presumably, Tommy, you're referring to the U.S. president. Based on the
See, here's a classic example, Tommy, Dancing Tommy. Here's a classic example with your comment that you're not paying attention to the real situation. Iran was moving towards nuclear weapons. Look at what they did with conventional ballistic missiles. If they had nuclear weapons, it would be a totally different ballgame. And that the United States would have to nuke Iran. So, Tommy, you need to pay attention to what's going on here. And oh, by the way, all these other presidents, including Trump 1.0, weren't willing to solve the problem. And it took 47 years to actually get the ball rolling, to actually solve and dig out the cancer that is in the Middle East. Now, it's too easy to be a pacifist. It takes leadership to actually try to solve hard problems. Now, that doesn't mean that Trump is perfect. And he is a little bit mercurial. But the point here is that the United States did the right thing, and that was to kick the shit out of the IRGC and the Ayatollah. Because in the end, the world will be safer. That doesn't mean that the world's safer right now. But in the end, this was the right thing to do. Too easy to make these stupid statements. What are you supposed to do, Tommy? What are you supposed to do? Do nothing? What are you going to do? What are you supposed to do? Make stupid comments? Why not give a real solution?
Is talking about. Now, there were reports during the first week of this conflict that Saudi Arabia had privately egged President Trump on to take military action. Now it might be a case of buyer's remorse for Riyadh, with Iran attacking the country daily.
Is that really true? Because according to sources from the mainstream media, Trump has been talking to MDS, and MDS is saying, get the job done. You're doing the right thing. Really? See, this is the problem with the mainstream media. Where are you getting your facts? And do they have an agenda? Did she really have to read? Did DW, which is a large organization that's out of Germany, media, all right? This is kind of their version of BBC. Why did she even have to read that stupid comment? Because they have an agenda. It's always tried to demonize Trump. Always try to demonize Trump. What about actually saying maybe the world is better off in the long run by the United States taking the leadership role in solving a problem that has been plaguing the world for 47 years? Almost all of the Islamic terrorism was funded from Iran. Almost all of it.
Let's talk about the point at which Riyadh might finally escalate its response in this context, or if Riyadh wants to avoid this escalating at all costs. Let's go to William first, and then we'll go to Sarah for your thoughts on that.
Well, yes, the Gulf states have always been a little bit miffed by the U.S. approach to say it's about the nuclear program, because for the states in the Gulf region, it's about Iran's support for proxy wars, for the Houthis in Yemen, for Hezbollah and for Hamas, their strategy of pushing revolution across the region.
Listen. They funded these proxy wars with the Houthis, with Hezbollah, with Hamas. And MDS said that if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, that the Saudis have to get a nuclear weapon. That means nuclear proliferation between the Sunnis and the Shias. Do you think that's going to turn out really well for the world? So wake up. Wake up. People kicked the can down the road too many times, and now it's time to pay the piper. We have to get the job done. Same thing with the Israelis. The Israelis kept on kicking the can down the road when it came to the Palestinian issue. They have to solve it. They have to solve it. Can't keep on kicking the can down the road. And the reality of the situation is that if what has been written down for thousands of years comes true, that means that the Palestinians aren't going to have a state. They're not going to be in the West Bank. They're not going to be in, these areas that they think that they are entitled to. That's just the way it is. And then you have in modern society and these liberals that are saying we got to end colonialism and all this, you know, and it's all about natives, you know, the native population. All territory has been gained through war. If you can't hold it, if you can't hold the land, you don't deserve the land. It's that simple. Independent of you, you know, just even if you have some sort of religious claim, if the Jews can't hold the land, they don't deserve it. If the Palestinians can't hold the land, they don't deserve it. It's that simple. It's all about power projection. So in terms of the law of the jungle, yeah, that's how you maintain your sovereignty.
The idea that we were talking before about the limit on Iranian missiles, 2,000 kilometers. Well, that's great for Europeans, but that's terrible if you live in the Gulf. And so there was some pressure from the Gulf states, including Saudi Arabia, for the United States to take a tougher stance on Iran. And I can believe that they were quietly supportive of action, as long as it was very effective and targeted and didn't have long-lasting impact on Saudi Arabia itself. In the meantime, Iran has been learning from the use of its own drones in Ukraine on how to overwhelm better air defenses. And now, you know, we're seeing the occasional missile towards Saudi Arabia's oil production capabilities. We're seeing drones, etc. I do think there is a tipping point where if Iran continues to target Saudi energy infrastructure, or even to go after a civilian population, where Saudi Arabia might consider some sort of kinetic action, but I think it's very careful in this regard because, you know, for Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states, they do have to live with Iran no matter what. And so engaging just in open warfare without an idea of exactly what the U.S. war plan and war aims, as you guys were just talking about, what war termination looks like, it would be really bad for Saudi Arabia to join in now and then have the United States try to, you know, stop conflict, declare a ceasefire, down tools, whatever, and then have Saudi Arabia exposed as a target for further Iranian retaliation. So it's a very complex game right now. And I think all the Gulf states are just really watching carefully, trying to defend themselves against missiles and drones, but not wanting to engage unless they absolutely have to.
Sarah, do you agree with William?
Well, I agree that they're very
Grit, stability, precision. That's the essence of driving. Lawfin.
Blink and get more with new 2K Plus Smart Security. With Blink 2K Plus, get set up in minutes to see every detail in crypto.
Well, I agree that they're very careful about, that they're very cautious. I think something that we need to pay more attention to is that I think many states were undermining resilience of the Islamic Republic. Many were hoping that once Khamenei is dead, then maybe another something, and not just regional states, but also within Iran, the opposition groups. Many were undermining the resilience of the Islamic Republic. So they were hoping maybe initially when they were encouraging the United States to maybe go harder on Iran, they were hoping that with a targeted attack, Iran is going to become weak. And this is something, a weak Iran is something that would benefit most states in the region. But they were not maybe foreseeing the price Iran was willing to pay for preserving not just its survival, but also to prove that it has still the power to inflict costs on regional powers. I think at the moment, the Saudi and basically all the Gulf states, they are avoiding, as much as they can, they are avoiding getting into this war actively and directly. It is very obvious. But two things are complicating this situation. One is that if Houthis start making the Red Sea insecure, because Bab al-Mandab is now basically the main oil transport route for Saudi, with the Strait of Hormuz being almost closed for the past few weeks. So basically, that can bring the conflict maybe to a whole new scale. Another issue, another kind of immunity issue that the situation has for the Saudi is that any sort of starting and a direct war on Iran would require a military coalition of the Islamic states, which Israel would see we wouldn't really see favorably. Recently, Naftali Bennett in that tweet basically was threatening Turkey that if they try to start moving into creating any sort of Islamic
coalition, Islamic military coalition. And basically, I think this was not just a threat to Turkey, but also was addressing the entire region, that any effort for creating Islamic military coalitions is going to turn those countries potentially next targets, maybe for Israel, and is going to escalate tensions further. So if they want to enter in a sort of war, they would need to create coalitions, and that coalition is going to bring in with it new retaliations and new conflicts. I want to ask you about a country that is very concerned about possibly being dragged into war, and that is the country of Iraq. The country has become more volatile. The latest is that Baghdad's National Intelligence Office was hit by a drone. The country has a history of sectarian violence, and of course you have Iran-backed Iraqi paramilitaries that have launched.
The problem is Iraq shouldn't be a country. It's some sort of post-World War I construct. Probably Iraq should be broken up, and certain parts should go to Iran, certain parts should go to Turkey, some parts probably even should go to Jordan and Syria. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Clarity Factor. Clarity Factor is a very powerful neurostack, so you have better memory and you'll be thinking faster and you'll be able to concentrate. Take this every day to improve your neurons. Super important. You take this, you're going to be able to concentrate on tasks. Digestive enzyme complex. This is super important for your pancreatic health. This will break up proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids, reduce the stress on your pancreas, and you'll be able to absorb your nutrients better. This has bromelain in it, so it also helps to break up clots. And digestive enzyme complex has the proteolytic enzymes that break up glycoproteins. And that's really important during the cold season. Let's continue on with the experts on DW.
And U.S. troops there. And also, I know that there are supporters of Iran among its majority Shia Muslim population. Is it possible things might escalate there, Sarah?
I think this war has opened like some sort of a Pandora box. Many front lines are going to be open potentially between Shia.
And we're not supposed to do this? Are we supposed to just sit there and let Tehran ending up having a nuclear weapon? I mean, come on. Really? Maybe it's time. Maybe it's time to just kick the hornet's nest and start kicking ass. Instead of having, well, maybe we shouldn't have a war. Maybe we should just, The problem here is that people need to wake up. There is a cancer that is happening in Western civilization. And that cancer isn't hubris, isn't Donald Trump. That cancer is the spread of Islam within Western culture. If you don't believe me, take a look at some cities that are being taken over in the United States. What about London? It's already starting to happen in New York City. Take a look at Hamtramck, Michigan. Or what about Dearborn, Michigan? You think it's Americana? Or do you think it's Islamabad? Now, this sounds like, well, you're being negative against, certain religion. No, the problem is that the actual ethos, the actual DNA of the Quran is colonialism. And what's really weird, what's so ironic about this is the ultra-liberals that keep on whining about colonialism, how bad Western culture is actually opening up the door for Islamic colonialism called a caliphate.
Groups and also basically Shia people who are not really happy with the situation and their enemies. And Iraq is the first country to be affected by that. This is one of the reasons, and as you just mentioned that. So Iraq has already been affected by the war. At least we could consider the war has been extended into the territory of the state of Iraq in two different ways. One is through these supporters of Iran, the militant groups, and another way is Iran has been attacking Kurdish militant and non-militant sites of the Iranian Kurdish parties inside the territory of the Kurdish region of Iraq. So already
already the state of Iraq is being affected by the war, really. And yes, if the tensions escalate, more front lines are going to be opened up between the different forces, because, yeah, as you said, it basically reflects many opposition groups that exist within Iran. Many kind of fractions of power have their representatives in a way inside Iraq, so it can easily turn into another front line of war and contestations.
I want to pursue a bit more about this. I want to talk about the Kurdish role for Sarah, but William, I want to check in with you and see if you have anything to add to what Sarah just said. Otherwise, I'll move on to my next question. William?
No, that's fine. I think she's got it perfectly.
Okay, so Sarah, there are
Experience an empowered ecosystem designed to deliver actionable insights that inspire growth and sustainability. So you could see further, innovate faster, accomplish more. That's the Connect effect.
Okay, so Sarah, there are diverse Kurdish populations, not just in Iran, but also Iraq, Turkey, and even Syria. What do we know about the dynamics among the Kurds and how keen any of them might be to fight yet again after being burned by the Americans a number of times over the past few decades? Sarah, I know this is something that you specially focus on.
Well, yeah, but this is a very complicated, really, topic and question, because the Kurdish territory is being divided among 4 nation states, so the dynamic, you can just imagine how complicated it is. I think at the moment, the Kurds are already being attacked a lot, and they have been, when you think about it, Iran has been attacking, as I said, these Kurdish bases inside the territory of the Kurdish region of Iraq since the beginning of the war. And already what was referred to as a news leakage by CNN claiming that the U.S. is planning to turn the Kurds into their boots on the ground, a claim that later was denied basically both by Trump and by the Kurdish parties, that no such arrangement has been made. But already that put them under extra security kind of measures and made them even easier targets for the Islamic Republic. So they already have been really paying a high price for a war in which they are not even taking any role yet. And they have made it clear as much as possible that this is not their war. But we also need to pay attention to the fact that if the situation moves towards a civil war kind of situation, towards pushing Iran to the point of becoming a failed state, which I think is Israel's strategy at the moment, then they would also need to step in. They would need to think about their own self-defense. It seems that what the parties are at the moment prioritizing is to make sure that they are preserving their forces for self-defense if it is needed, and if the time comes that it is needed, while also trying to kind of make actions that is in accordance with what is happening elsewhere in the region. It is an opportunity. They have a part of the right to self-determination. They might have negotiations with any state, but it seems that they are very logically prioritizing their own survival and self-defense.
Got it. Thank you very much. I think I'll leave it there with both Sarah Kermanian and William Albert. Thank you very much, the both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 is a gene expression cofactor, so your cells perform properly. Vitamin D3 helps your cardiovascular health. Vitamin D3 will help to get cells to go into apoptosis if they're infected. And vitamin D3 helps with bone density. Take some calcium, do some resistance training. And oh, by the way, vitamin D3 is more effective when you take the magnesium from my store. Now, lignans will help your immune system and your endocrine system bring down inflammation and soak up free radicals. This is very important to take every day, slow down that aging process. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
In DW's Jerusalem correspondent, Emily Gordine. Thank you very much, Emily, for your patience. And in case you're just joining us, we are talking about, well, of course, the latest that we have on this conflict over the past 3 weeks, with the latest headline saying that Trump is mulling a winding down of the war and saying that other nations should guard the Strait of Hormuz. But Emily, over to you in Jerusalem. Israel has launched missiles and have received its fair share in return over the past few weeks. And on Friday, Police said shrapnel fell near holy sites where you are now in Jerusalem's Old City. What can you tell us about what happened?
That's right. Now, what you need to understand about the situation here, when Iran launches missiles, especially at central Israel, they come from that direction and they fly over Jerusalem. And this is where a lot of them are intercepted. And so when they are intercepted, a lot of the shrapnel lands here. And we've seen that over the last few weeks, that shrapnel has landed all across Jerusalem, in the streets, in the houses, sometimes damaging roofs and cars. But what was unusual yesterday, where we saw an extensive set of barrages across the country, is that one of the fragments of the intercepted missiles hit the walls of the old city that you see behind me. The missile fragment hit close to the Temple Mount, that is most prominently visible here through the Golden Dome of Rock. And of course, this is a holy site to Christians, Muslims, to Jews as well. And of course, that causes concern. But that being said, at the moment, the Israeli authorities have closed the Al-Aqsa compound. They have also closed the Holy Sepulchre Church at the Western Wall, where Jewish worshippers usually gather to pray. They are allowed to gather at the Western Wall, but only in small numbers, 50 people at a time, according to the Home Command security rules at the moment. So fewer people around, but it was, of course, a shocking image for the people who live here and to worshippers and the religious people of this country who hold this site sanctimonious, holy.
Now, the U.S. and Israel continue to target security infrastructure in Iran in this attempt to undermine the state's internal control. Emily, any sense whether that is working?
Well, we did hear from Benjamin Netanyahu that, according to him, according to his security and intelligence information, cracks, quotes, are starting to show in the Iranian regime. Now, what we're seeing play out in Iran is essentially the same blueprint that the Israelis applied in Gaza and in what they're applying in Lebanon right now, where the aim is to take out the head of the operation there, the head of Hamas, the head of the leadership of Hezbollah in Lebanon. Exactly what we're seeing in Iran right now. It started with the killing of a Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei and continued throughout. The question is just whether that is really going to work. In Gaza, what we're seeing at the moment, just to give you an idea, Hamas is reports at least suggest that they have been re-establishing their authority, their power, their control over the Gaza Strip. In Lebanon, it's unclear what the outcome of this operation is going to be. But Iran is a whole different ballpark, really. We're talking different dimensions. It's a huge country, a huge security apparatus, and experts certainly are not convinced that an air operation alone will evoke a regime change in Iran.
Now, Emily, even as the U.S. and Israel work together firing on targets, the long-term goals of the two countries appear increasingly divergent. How big a conversation is that among the Israeli public?
Well, the Israeli public at this point is mostly concerned with, well, first of all, the Israeli public supports this war. They know that the Americans are their most important allies, that they are vital. But the Israelis are mostly concerned about the day after. What is the plan? What is the strategy going forward? For the Israelis, it's important to destroy Iran's nuclear program, to destroy or at least mitigate the nuclear program. Same goes for the ballistic missile program. Preferably, they'd also like to see regime change. But when you look at the Trump administration, you've seen mixed messaging throughout this war. So it is unclear, even though both sides continue to reiterate that they are on the same side, they're on the same page, they pursue the same strategy. But what's coming out of the mouths of those two leaders is somewhat divergent. And it's really unclear to analysts, observers, journalists like myself, where the two sides are really going with this operation.
Emily Gordine, thank you very much for joining us in Jerusalem.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the heirloom barley. Heirloom barley will detoxify. It will also soak up free radicals and bring down inflammation. When you're detoxifying your body, soaking up free radicals and bringing down inflammation, you're helping your immune system, your endocrine system, your brain function, your cardiovascular system. You will recover quicker after a workout. You'll slow down the aging process. Take this every day and you're gonna see the benefits of it. Now, you can stack it with Boomer Boost or take it separately. You'll be also able to help control your A1C levels, especially when you stack it with the Boomer Boost. If you have pain, muscle pain, joint pain, even headaches, this is a great product to take to relieve the pain. It's super strong relief. You apply it topically to the area where your pain is, and within 60 to 90 seconds, your pain is going to be eliminated or reduced. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the super strong relief. All right, let's play a interview where they were asking Sir Niall Ferguson about his perspectives about history is repeating itself and the West isn't ready.
In the next 10 minutes is to set Australia's strategic predicament in some kind of historical and global perspective. Since the end of the Cold War, the breakup of the Soviet Union, countries like Australia, but the same is true of the United States and its other Asian allies, not to mention its European allies, have been enjoying what was called a peace dividend. Defense budgets all around the world went down significantly in the 1990s, and they stayed down in the Australian case, hovering around 2% of gross domestic product, sometimes less, until very recently. And I think it will surprise future historians that so many countries were still spending so little on defense as recently as 2020, because as far as I could see, for some years before 2020, the world was already moving into a new Cold War. The interwar period.
It's insane. I can see a student here.
Don't worry, Ship. The General gives you a break to keep you covered, whether it's on your car insurance
or a break from your car accident. The interwar period, the time between Cold War I and Cold War II, lasted from really the early 1990s until, let's say, around 2016. What brought that interwar period to an end and began the Second Cold War? I think it was partly the advent of Xi Jinping as the Chinese leader, but I think it was also the backlash against globalization that characterized politics in so many countries, not least the United States, producing President Trump's first election victory in 2016, as well as disruptions like Brexit, the exit of the United Kingdom from the European Union. An arms race has been going on for some time, in Asia especially, but in that race, most of the running has been done by the People's Republic of China. The scale of Chinese rearmament, or just plain armament under Xi Jinping, is breathtaking. China is on its way to being the third nuclear superpower. It has already amassed hundreds of warheads. Soon there will be thousands of warheads. China has not only acquired a massive nuclear capability under Xi Jinping, it has also acquired a huge range of non-nuclear missile capabilities, including hypersonic missiles capable of hitting targets as far away as Guam, a crucial nerve center for US military communications. So I think future historians will wonder why it took so long for countries such as Australia to appreciate the implications of this extraordinarily rapid arms buildup. Even the United States.
The reason why the Western countries didn't get involved in pushing back on China was because they wanted to have a trading partner. They wanted to have cheap goods made in China, and countries wanted to send raw materials to China. The United States wanted to import the cheaper goods from China and have them buy our bonds. And we built up our enemy. Now we have to kill them. Now, if you've been around New York for a little while, especially during, the last 26 years, you'll notice that a lot of fund managers, they keep on talking about, oh, send money to overseas and help build this and help build that. All they care about is following the yield for a certain fund. But they don't care about the implications, the long-term implications of that FDI, foreign direct investment. They don't care about it. Because, they collected their fee, they made their money, and they're sitting pretty. You fast forward 26 years later, once China was brought into the fold for World Trade Organization, and guess what? Now we are near to the point where we're going to have a war with China. So you could have cheap spatulas at Walmart.
Remarkably slow in the uptake. Think of it. China's navy, at least in terms of numbers of vessels, is now larger than the United States Navy. That's an extraordinary.
That's a big worry. But what about actual usage of that heavy hardware? That large hardware, the Navy takes organizational skill and war experience, battlefield experience, naval experience. Now, the Chinese don't have that. They don't have the experience. But the thing is that they are building an awful lot of hardware. We should have never allowed them to have that. And it came from too many people in the United States looking for cheap goods, too many transnational capitalists. They were looking for ways to cut their costs and move their operations to Asia, and too many fund managers moving client money overseas. And now, middle America is going to have to fix the problem. And we need to hold these people accountable. These ultra liberals, these transnational capitalists, these people that were actually talking down America, yet they're benefiting from the freedoms that the United States has. We need to hold these people accountable.
Change. And the economic balance of power is also tilted in China's favor. 20 years ago, US manufacturing value added was roughly double that of China. Today, China's is roughly double that of the United States. China is the workshop of the world, and it's manufacturing not only solar cells, batteries, and electric vehicles, but who knows how many drones. This Cold War, like the
Men don't do basic hydration. We need super hydration. Old Spice super hydration. Vitamin booster for 24/7 healthier looking skin.
Babe?
This Cold War, like the first Cold War, isn't all cold. Just as in the first Cold War, there were hot wars in countries such as Korea, as well as, of course, in Vietnam. There are hot wars in Cold War II. The most striking of these, certainly the most violent to date, is in Ukraine. And I want to draw your attention to these key trouble spots. two of which are live and one of which could become live imminently. In Ukraine, war broke out, in fact, long ago, in 2014, when Russia annexed Crimea and established puppet republics in Donetsk and Luhansk. The war is just about to enter its 5th year. Russian casualties probably exceed 250,000. It's a war of extraordinary brutality, mainly because of the use of drones. The war in Ukraine is the first drone war, and it is a new kind of revolution in military affairs, where literally millions of drones are being produced by the two sides. Each year, 70 to 80% of casualties are caused by drones. This is a new kind of war, and Australia is just one of the many countries that have not fully adapted to this change in the nature of conflict. In 2023, another trouble spot turned hot, or perhaps hotter, on October 7th, 2023, when Iranian proxies, Hamas, and Palestinian Islamic Jihad launched a pogrom against Israeli civilians. War in the Middle East was never just about Gaza. Israel has been fighting, some say, a 7-front war. And as I speak to you, an aircraft carrier group of the United States is in position in the Persian Gulf for what seems to me quite likely to be further airstrikes against Iran to put a definitive end to Iran's ambitions to become a nuclear armed power. So one can expect more hot war fairly imminently, I think, in the Middle East. The third trouble spot that isn't yet hot, but is certainly warming up, is, of course, Taiwan. The capstone of Xi Jinping's career would be to bring Taiwan under the control of the Chinese Communist Party the way he's been able to bring Hong Kong under its control, putting an end to civil and political liberties, despite all talk of two systems. The fate of Taiwan hangs in the balance. It certainly will be the object of negotiations this year, but it seems to me increasingly likely that at some point imminently, and by that I mean in the next 3 years, China will make some kind of move against Taiwan. I don't believe it will be a full-scale amphibious invasion. I think it could be a blockade, or it might be something in a gray area, something as Ike Fryman argues in his forthcoming book, Defending Taiwan, that would be hard to define as war because it might be presented as simply a quarantine. That was the term used by John F. Kennedy when the United States quarantined Cuba in 1962, the most dangerous moment in the first Cold War. My fear is that we are hurtling towards not a Cuban Missile Crisis, but a Taiwanese semiconductor crisis, the economic consequences of which will be far greater than the consequences of the Cuban Missile Crisis, but the military risks of which will be at least as big. China has shown that it's capable of encircling Taiwan, of violating its airspace at will. Its most recent naval exercises at the beginning of this year were the biggest that we've yet seen. And Xi Jinping harps on in public as well as, I believe, in private on the subject of Taiwan and the supposed threat that proponents of independence pose to China's one China policy. So for Australia,
Just stress sweating through my third set of scrubs. Totally normal, very healthy. I'm sure it's not a sign of emotional unraveling.
You need new Secret Clinical Antiperspirant. Secret gives 3 times more stress sweat protection. Thanks. Got a bunch. Secret, stay fresh under pressure.
New finished Ultimate Quantum costs less than Cascade? This just makes sense.
It makes sense because nothing tastes better than finished.
So for Australia, the world has become a great deal more dangerous than it was in the 1990s and in the 2000s. And I think it's been getting more dangerous for pretty much the last 10 years. It's high time that Australia took appropriate action. There's one last thing I want to point out. In a situation like this,
appreciate the transparency.
you can take the right action, but get the timing wrong. AUKUS is important. The United States needs allies like Australia and the United Kingdom in order to bolster the stability of the Indo-Pacific region. But a plan that only delivers nuclear-powered submarines to Australia between the 2030s and 2050s is not an answer to the urgent problem of the 2020s. It strikes me, as I look at the problem from a distance, sitting here in the Hoover Institution on the Stanford campus, that Australia does need a plan B, a short-run plan to address the threat that is posed by China to the stability of the Indo-Pacific region. Japan seems to me more alive to this threat today than Australia is. And I very much hope that in your deliberations, you will come up with that urgently needed plan B, not instead of AUKUS, but before it, when it is urgently needed. Thanks very much.
If you'd like to watch,
please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the collagen. I'm sorry, get the collagen. The collagen, you can also take it with the collagen. But collagen is a liquid that you take underneath your tongue and drink filtered water. Take it every day. What this will do is help to remodel the joint. And it does a lot of things. It helps to recruit glucosamine and chondroitin using collagen type 2 and ACAN to help to remodel the joint and to help to cushion the joint. It's very powerful. Take it every day, all right? Especially if you have a sports injury or you're just getting older and you're starting to have arthritis or you're starting to have joint pain, it's important to take this. The earlier that you take it, the better. Now, collagen can be taken with the collagen to help with that synergistic approach to rebuilding the cartilage. Now, collagen also blocks the pain by inhibiting EP4, and collagen helps with blocking the erosion of the joint by blocking two types of enzymes, MMP3 and MMP13. So please go to my store and get the collagen. All right, let's listen into Bloomberg and the Gucci strategy. Never heard of it before, but let's listen in.
And say that Admiral Cooper is having about what the U.S. is doing in Iran. But that said, I think we've already seen these announcements of various attacks to degrade Iranian capabilities. But that doesn't necessarily mean that these capabilities are off the table. There's also a real focus right now on Iran's conventional capabilities. It's conventional navy, it's anti-ship cruise missiles, it's command and control architecture. And while that is all well and good, Iran can do a lot with very little. It can threaten the Strait of Hormuz with drones. It doesn't need to have some of its large warships. It can use IRGC fast boats. There are so many different ways that Iran can still threaten the Strait of Hormuz that are more asymmetric. And some of these attacks will most certainly degrade Iranian capabilities, but it doesn't take them out entirely. And that, I think, is where we maybe have some problems with the theory of victory that's being put forward by U.S. Central Command, the Pentagon, and, frankly, President Donald Trump.
Okay, you mentioned transparency, and it's nice to hear updates on the operations, but in previous administrations, Republican and Democrat, this would have been a press conference. Why wasn't this a press conference? And can we get your take on this court ruling that those Pentagon passes were taken away, that the parameters by which you could retract a Pentagon pass were not legal?
I mean, it would have been a press conference, and in fairness, we have had Pentagon press conferences pretty routinely since the start of the war with Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Dan Payne.
Yeah.
However, that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone's in the room, right? We're all watching from afar quite often because there is this new Pentagon press corps. So there is transparency, but it's so focused on all of these tactical successes as opposed to focusing on the bigger picture and strategic success. There's also the question of why hasn't there been any open door congressional hearings about this? That's definitely something we would have seen in previous administrations.
And something we've heard from Republicans about, that if they were to authorize this $200 billion package, they would want to see those hearings. I think Senator Kennedy said that in remarks yesterday. Becca, I want to ask you about your most recent piece. You're writing about kind of the military tack that this president has taken or favored. That is favoring air power, special operation forces. You use a term that candidly I love, which is Gucci high-end long-range equipment. What he's experiencing now, though, is the degree in which that works in kind of a longer-term scenario here. You write that violence wielded from afar can only accomplish so much. I'd love for you to talk about that lesson learned, especially as we've been talking about over the course of this morning. The president is clearly thinking about the prospect of going to Kharg Island and trying to take that very critical part of Iran's oil infrastructure.
Part of Trump's way of warfare has been this idea of war without entanglement, the idea of no boots on the ground, no big coalitions of the willing, no need to actually be there, just use coercive force in any way that you can from a distance. But when you try and do that without clear objectives, oftentimes you find that it doesn't work. And so Trump has found himself having these strikes and then potential restrikes. And I think looking at the Iran war, we can even think of this as a restrike. Trump went in during June of last year for Operation Midnight Hammer. It didn't actually achieve what he set out for it to achieve. So we find ourselves mired in conflict yet again. And I think with this current war going on much longer than Trump intended, there's the potential for ground force deployment. As you said, we've seen various Marine units get called up. And at this juncture in time, it potentially risks becoming one of the very forever wars that Trump campaigned against. And that just shows the limits of his approach to warfare.
And that's the irony here, especially as he talks about wrapping up this operation and possibly looking at others, including Cuba. I want to read a little bit more from your piece. You say Donald Trump believes America can fight wars without becoming trapped in them. Yet this more muscular military vision rarely produces the political outcomes he desires. One of the things we've been discussing is the fact that you just mentioned it. When you're coming in hard and hot with these airstrikes, this works for him in Venezuela. It is not going to work everywhere, and it may not work like that in Iran. And I think it seems the president is now trying to get his hands around what he wants to do here. Can he achieve his objectives, frankly, without putting boots on the ground?
The question is, what are his objectives? It's been a bit vacillating. It's been all over the place. And so a lot of what we've actually heard from the president and from folks who are in support of his aims have really focused once again on these tactical and operational objectives, not a broader strategic picture. And that is something that makes it really difficult to disentangle yourself, and it makes it really difficult to try.
First of all, Trump hasn't told you because maybe it's none of your business. Second of all, the strategy that is happening in the Middle East with U.S. operations actually has been in the making for multiple years, 4 or 5 years, this war plan. So it has contingencies, and it's been in the works for a long time. So it's hard to believe that Bloomberg's economics defense lead can't understand that. I mean, do you think that they just created this plan on what they were going to do with Iran and spare the moment? No, this thing has been in the works for 4 or 5 years. So that means that this plan was happening during Biden's administration. You don't believe me? Go to U.S. Naval Institute and watch one of the latest videos, and they are interviewing one of the many people that actually made the war plan. Why can't Bloomberg do that? Why can't Bloomberg do something so simple as do a little bit of research?
When you keep on just slapping more and more tactical objectives onto something. And that's the risk where we might actually see some of these ground forces. And it's also the risk that I think Trump has seen in this current term, where he's launched over 9,000 strikes all around the globe, not only the Middle East.
Very quickly here, you write about the splendid isolation he seems to find himself in. We've got a 30 seconds.
And do you think it's only by accident that we actually went into Venezuela first before we hit Iran? Maybe part of the war plan was to secure the heavy crude oil that is needed at Pad 3 and Pad 2 for our refineries. And by controlling the oil flow in Iran and hopefully having a government that's aligned with the United States, we now have a two-front war against China. Yeah, Trump is so stupid. Yeah, and the Pentagon didn't have any plan. And that, what bullshit. What total bullshit. But these liberals, these fucking liberals, I mean, he can't even, I mean, I'm so sick of this. Why can't this guy wear a fucking tie? Why does he have to look like he's like working for Goldman Sachs?
But this is a moment when he's trying to get allies to help him out, and yet he finds himself increasingly alone and isolated, only with Israel. Yes, an ally, but with no more than that.
Yeah, I think Trump thought that he could essentially do it alone with one model ally who could come in and provide some additional firepower. And I think now he's finding that he needs allies. Look at his call for requests for the Strait of Hormuz. Once you eschew allies, they're not necessarily going to come to your aid just because you asked for it after the fact.
What's that thing going on?
Do you really think that the Europeans would have helped even if they were given the heads up or if they were part of the war planning? And if we did have them part of the war planning, do you think that it would stay quiet? Of course not. They can't even solve the problem in their own backyard called Ukraine. Oh, and why doesn't she mention that literally the British Navy is almost non-existent? They're not a naval power anymore. It's gone. They don't have ships for their admirals. The admirals literally have a desk on land, but they have no ship to command.
Well, if you want a village, you got to be a villager. I guess that applies to diplomacy too.
Mike Chappell here, Patriot Software's founder. My third successful.
Mixed messages.
All right, we'll see. Merskanish, if that's how you pronounce his name. He's an ultra liberal too. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Boomer Boost. This has 68 nutrients that will help you to slow down the aging process and increase your vitality and your longevity. Boomer Boost will help with your cardiovascular health, your musculature, your endocrine system, your immune system, be able to control your blood glucose levels, help with brain function, improve your energy and your metabolism. Take this every day, super important. This is very powerful. You'll start feeling the effects of this within 72 hours. You take this every day for a year, you're going to see differences on how your body is. You're going to be healthier. You're going to have more energy. You're going to be more active. When you're more active, guess what? You have more bone density. You have more musculature. And if you apply it with some other holistic approaches like proper diet and exercise, getting enough sleep, some spirituality, learning new things, reading and writing and talking to people in the real world, you're actually slowing down the aging process and improving your neurons. So please go to my store, take the Boomer Boost.
We're counted in the Philly burbs. Officials say thousands more Marines and sailors now headed to the Middle East. They come from the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit and the Boxer Amphibious Ready Group, a rapid response force of about 2,000 Marines, aircraft, and warships built to conduct combat operations from the sea without a permanent base on the ground. At the same time, last night, President Trump took to Truth Social, writing that he's considering, quote, winding down U.S. military operations in the Middle East. Meantime, a U.S. official says Iran launched 2 ballistic missiles at Diego Garcia, a joint U.S.-UK military base in the Indian Ocean. But the official says the missiles missed the base. This, as sources say, President Trump is weighing options that could include targeting Car Island near the Strait of Hormuz. And at the same time, the Washington Post is reporting that there's a key fault line developing between Washington and Jerusalem. The White House says its goals are focused, disrupting Iran's military capabilities and preventing a nuclear weapon. Israel, by contrast, appears willing to go further, targeting the regime itself. And all of this is playing out with real global consequences. Oil prices have surged more than 40% since the war began. And President Trump is now pressuring NATO allies to do more, even as the Pentagon prepares options for possible U.S. ground forces, a step the president says he has not yet decided to take. So, where is all of this pointing? Joining me now, CNN senior military analyst and former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, Admiral James Stavridis. Admiral, nice to see you again. We're sending thousands of Marines to the Middle East, and meanwhile, the president, via Truth Social, says he's considering winding down operations. Read those tea leaves.
He's basically saying that we're not going to hit as many targets. We've already hit, according to some reports, over 9,000, 8,000 to 9,000 hits. Targets. All right, so we wind down the air campaign and we start moving to the next phase. Control the small islands, police the area, make sure the strait is open for business. What's wrong with that? I mean, come on, you're on mainstream media. I mean, you're an anchor. I think it's on MSN. Or it's not even MSN, NBC anymore. It's MS Now. Or whatever it's called. Oh, no,
I think they're both right,
CNN.
meaning he is going to bring those Marines into position to conduct a variety of operations. A Marine Expeditionary Unit, pretty competent and capable force. 2,500 Marines in the first one on USS Tripoli, another 2,500 on the second. So bring those forces in position, use them to continue to pressure the regime, and at the same time talk about finding an off-ramp. I don't actually see those two things to be in conflict. I think the former can help you achieve the latter.
Exactly.
What can a Marine Expeditionary Unit actually do?
Kick ass.
Michael, I grew up in the Marine Corps. My dad was Colonel of Marines, World War II, Korea, Vietnam. I know Marine Corps DNA as well as anybody who's not a Marine. If you ask a Marine what a Marine Expeditionary Unit can be, they will say anything. Right. That's a bit of a hyperbole, but they're very capable at raids from the sea. They can seize and occupy territory. They can conduct rescue operations. They could go after enriched uranium. It's a huge amount of capability that can be packed in a pretty small footprint, kept at sea. Now, having said all that, the primary thing people are talking about is Car Island, as you mentioned in the read-in. And here you've got an island 2 miles by 4 miles. It's roughly the size of Iwo Jima. And we ought to remember the island of Iwo Jima in the Second World War, we had 100,000 troops taking that down. Now, some big differences. Car is coral, so the enemy can't really dig in the way the Japanese did in the volcanic sand. of Iwo Jima. It's lightly defended at the moment. Iwo Jima was heavily defended, and it's within immediate range of our air and sea superiority. So as a mission, I suspect that is what's being considered right now. I think one Marine Expeditionary Unit could take that mission on, seize it, hold it. A second one would be reassuring for the commander. And then you turn to the Iranians and you, at that point, say, open the strait or we'll hold on to this and cut off your economy. 90% of their oil flows through.
So most likely we take Karg Island first, do some negotiation. They'll probably not capitulate. The Iranians won't capitulate. And then the extra Marine force will take the other islands that are in the strait.
Is the deployment that you're describing what boots on the ground looks like in Iran?
Yes.
I think by definition, if they seize and hold the territory of Par Island, yup, that's boots on the ground. Now, they could simply marshal up around it and threaten it. They could raid it and disable it. There are gradations here, and there are other missions those Marines could take on. But this is a big decision facing President Trump. And final thought, Michael, if we did seize it and hold it, that could get challenging. Don't forget, it's only 15 miles off the Iranian coast. The Iranians have a 1 million-man army. They have excellent special forces, Quds troops, and they have not air or sea superiority, but boy, proximity means a lot. So resupplying those Marines and defending them could become a challenge.
Might one of the other missions under consideration be to use this force on the Iranian side of the Strait of Hormuz?
I think so. And if you look at the strait itself, it's about 100 miles of territory on the northern side of the strait. That's Iranian sovereign territory. You could use those Marines to conduct raids, to go after mine lane capability, small boat storage, short-range ballistic missiles. No shortage of targets there. So I think that probably is on the menu that's been placed in front of the president as well. And again, if you bring a second Marine Expeditionary Unit in, then you could conceivably do both of those. Although, boy, as a commander, I'm going to want to see them together.
Admiral, what do you think the exit ramp is? I have no doubt that the president is eager to, quote unquote, wind down, as he said in that Truth Social post. At the same time, he needs to have something to show for the effort. Maybe he would make the case that he's already destabilized the regime, destabilized their nuclear capability. But how can you see this ending sooner rather than later?
Two flies in the ointment of what you just described, Michael. The first is 1,000 pounds of enriched uranium somewhere in the country, probably in Isfahan. So that, I think, has to be resolved before President Trump can simply walk away from this and declare victory. The second one, I think, is more easily achievable, and that's reopening the Strait of Hormuz. So to answer the question, the off-ramp is coerce the Iranians into backing down on the Strait of Hormuz. I think at that point you could declare victory and simultaneously open serious negotiations or conduct a raid or try and destroy from the air the uranium. I think if President Trump can say, I opened the strait, I degraded their military 90%, and I got to the uranium, I think he can, in fact, declare victory, walk away from this.
Final question to go back to where I began, hopefully for a less than 60-second response. Must the U.S. and Israel be on the same page for this to end?
No.
Boy, it would help a lot. I think, however, at the moment, the Israelis are seized with the idea of regime change. That is extraordinarily difficult, not completely impossible, but difficult to achieve from the air. I think, however, the U.S. is very much the senior partner in this operation, at the end of the day, I think what President Trump decides is how this thing will end.
Admiral, we always appreciate your expertise and contribution. Thank you. And for everybody at home, hit me up on social media. Follow me on X, follow me on YouTube. Perhaps I'll respond to your comment during the course of the program. Wouldn't it be terrible if Trump's military efforts finally brought regime change and some peace to the Iranian people? I guess Kellyanne says tongue in cheek. Hey, I'm for victory. I made it clear here last week when we talked about the David Boies Wall Street Journal essay, where Boies comes at it as smart guy, trial lawyer, paying close attention to the world events, and says, in Boies' words, Trump's not my guy, but we're in it now, and I want him to succeed. I think that should sum up the thinking for lots of people.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. You can get it in extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil, and MCT coconut oil. C60 is 1,000 times stronger than vitamin C to soak up free radicals. It'll help to slow down the aging process, boost up your immune system, help with your endocrine system, help with brain function, help with your cardiovascular system, bring down inflammation. Super important. Reducing stress at the tissue level. And your energy levels will increase. Why? Because your mitochondria and your cells will improve and produce more ATP. And for your brain, over time, what's going to happen is you're going to have positive neuroplasticity. You're going to have better dendritic connections. You'll be thinking faster and your memory will improve. By soaking up free radicals at the vascular level, you're reducing plaque formation. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the C60, take a teaspoon a day every day. This will also help with your basal layer for your skin. So your skin will improve and look healthier and younger. So please go to my store, take a teaspoon a day every day. I've been doing this protocol with C60 since 2016. So 10 years, for 10 years, taking C60 every day. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. With that, that's the end of my broadcast. Thank you for listening. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the great supplements that I offer. Take them, stack them, and what's going to happen is you're going to slow down the aging process and get healthy. And if you also apply a holistic approach, proper diet and exercise, detoxify your body, get plenty of sleep, learn new things, have some spirituality or some mindfulness, you're going to slow down the aging process. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.